We speak of overreacting on a Monday, and one of the three of you talked about overreacting after 3 games of the season and being wary of it. Let's have our first Newcastle discussion of the season. I don't think we've had one yet on the previous 2 Monday nights. Alex Hurst from the Newcastle podcast True Faith joins us. How are you, Alex?
I'm good, thanks, Mark. Mate, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. I'm all right. Let me first of all ask you about a tweet that you retweeted this afternoon from a man called Yusuf, who's written an article for the True Faith podcast, where he says, my latest article, for the True Faith fanzine, Bruce out, sure, but not at all costs. Good decisions don't come from desperation. So what is being laid out there? What's the not at all cost bit, really?
I think there's a fear amongst Newcastle fans that if Bruce was to be replaced, he would just be replaced by one of his coaches. Obviously, I can't speak for Yusuf, who's an excellent writer for True Faith, but I think there's a fear that Graham Jones, who did such a good job with England in the summer as part of Gareth Southgate's coaching team, and came in and some people would say transformed Newcastle's end of season form, would be given the job. But Graham Jones might be a really good manager, but he's had one managerial stint with Luton Town, and from what I understand, Luton Town fans weren't delighted with him. So I think there's a feeling that a lot of Newcastle fans, myself included, think Steve Bruce does a very bad job at Newcastle. Newcastle, a very poor side under him, almost impossible to watch. And that the next change, and I'm really fascinated by the conversation you guys have just had about Norwich and about what Nedum said about coming up with a style of play. I've watched Steve Bruce's Newcastle side now for 3 seasons, and I couldn't tell you what the style of play is, apart from conceding about 20 shots a game, having about 30% possession, your goalkeeper making loads of saves, and occasionally nicking a result, and it's not a sustainable style of play to stay in the Premier League, unfortunately.
And also, as well as that style of play, Alex, if you go back to that Norwich conversation, a transfer policy that brings in, a lot of young, hungry players, both, and I know you did it with Willock last season on loan, but Norwich are managing to get 3 or 4 Willocks on loan from Premier League rivals to development, and that to develop them, and that bright young talent isn't heading to Newcastle for probably a variety of reasons.
Well, yeah, and this is one part that I do have some sympathy with Steve Bruce. He hasn't improved his squad at all from last season. Don't get me wrong, Joe Willock is a really, really good footballer. I think he's brilliant. I think he's destined for great things at the highest level. But ultimately, he's got the same starting 11 as he did at the end of last season. I don't think there's a single other Premier League club who put themselves in that position. So that's definitely an issue. I mean, the whole club is in free fall. You'll have heard, or you might have heard, that the crowd really turned on Steve Bruce on Saturday at St James's Park. I was at Aston Villa the week before in the away end, where for the first time in kind of my lifetime, I mean, I've seen Newcastle get beat away from home plenty of times and play terribly, but there were boos, there were songs towards Steve Bruce. The away end was kind of half full at full time. There was 8,000 empty seats at St James's Park on Saturday, and your 3 guys who you've got on the show who have played at St James's Park before.
Were Newcastle that bad against Aston Villa? And you sort of went back to the possession stats. I just had a look. They're 53% possession against Aston Villa. I remember the game. Was there a moment where Wilson got clattered? Was it just offside? I mean, they had opportunities in that game.
We didn't have opportunities. We were 2-0 down at that point. It was about 7 minutes to go in the game. So I don't think we gave them a game, Chris. This is the issue, I think, with a lot of Steve Bruce's
seconds away from winning at the weekend.
Very true. It would have been a scandalous win. I thought Southampton, 22 shots for Southampton there. Southampton missed an open goal in the first half. Just to bring it back to the Villa game quite briefly, and you guys might know more about Villa than me, but the issue with a lot of teams is they don't have to play well to beat Newcastle. So I thought Villa were very average against us, but one goalkeeper hasn't had to make a save. You said we had chances. We had one shot on target, and that was at the 93rd minute. it wasn't a shot, basically. This is the issue. You don't have to play well to beat Newcastle. In Steve Bruce's whole tenure, we have come from behind to win a game away from home once. So if you get the first goal against Newcastle United and you're playing at home, the game is over. The game is won. And this isn't a new guy in the job. This is a guy who's been here 3 seasons now. And you're right, Chris. Newcastle could have won at the death. I disagree completely with Steve Bruce. I'm not a fan of VAR myself, but Newcastle haven't been a victim of VAR injustice this season. The penalty at Aston Villa was a penalty. The penalty for Southampton at the weekend was a penalty. You can't, Newcastle have given them a penalty in all 3 Premier League games. That's not a mistake. We're the most defensive team in the league who can't defend.
I had to say I did find the post-match interview slightly odd with the focus on VAR from Steve Bruce. But Micah, you watched it. I mean, you watched it in the office on Saturday, and the easy thing is to go, oh my God, they were winning and they gave away an injury time penalty. How unlucky is that? But as Alex rightly points out, Southampton dominated that game.
Yeah, they did, and obviously I've worked under Steve Bruce and Steve Agnew, and it's strange sometimes because the training methods are really, really good. That they play off the front foot. We work hard. He wants everyone to be really fit. But at times when you're watching Newcastle, it doesn't really transpire onto the pitch. I don't know if it's confidence is playing. Alex has mentioned that they're starting with the same team as well. So for Alex, it's more a question for you. What is it that you need to go forward? Is it just the owners? Is it what do you want?
Well, I think that's a good question, because I think there's a good team there. I think you look at Callum Wilson, you look at Alan St-Maximin, you look at Joe Willock. These are players that would get in a lot. They might not get in teams in the top 6 or that area, but the rest of the Premier League, I think, look at those players with envy. A lot of fans don't like Steve Bruce because he insists on playing players out of position. You guys will know Miguel Almiron and Ryan Fraser. They're not central midfielders. They're wingers, attacking players. They get played in central midfield. It's baffling as a fan, to see it done and then to see the performances week after week. And it's like, how annoyed can you get? Because a lot of people say we'll blame the players.
Yeah, but were the Newcastle fans, the majority of the Newcastle fans, just angry at the start of the season and not seeing things fairly? And when I say that, I'm talking about the end to last season, which remarkable statement from Steve Bruce when he said he's going to start doing it his way. I didn't understand where that quote came from. You're thinking, well, what the hell happened before then? But the results did start to turn when his players came back. Wilson, got himself fit. St. Maximum, who you've mentioned, a big player, and Newcastle performed well. Now, we're sort of 3 games into this season, and it's a situation where I think we all expected the fans to turn. This was inevitable. This was going to happen. But has he been given a fair crack of the whip this season, 3 games in? What effect is that going to have on him, and what effect is it going to have on the team as a whole? Is it helpful, is what I'm trying to say, the reaction at the weekend?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think, well, first of all, you've already got kind of 8,000 fans walked away from Steve Bruce's team, which is unheard of at Newcastle. So 8,000 people have already decided this isn't for me under Steve Bruce. There's a lot of us, including myself, think that a decent manager, someone like Eddie Howe, and you've just been talking about Daniel Farke at Norwich, who has a style, has an identity. His teams play football. If it doesn't go well one week, they can work on things the next week. Mickey, you just said training when you went to Steve Bruce, everyone wanted to be fit. Newcastle look unfit. And in fact, you saw Newcastle first game against West Ham. Newcastle were probably the better team in the first half. West Ham were a good team, as they should. Second half, it was men against boys. The fitness of the West Ham team and the West Ham midfield dominated Newcastle in the second half. It's quite embarrassing to watch. And to bring it back to your question, Chris, about is it helpful? I don't think that Steve Bruce has it in him to improve players at this level. Look at a player like Jamal Lascelles, who under the previous manager was being touted for England, being touted for £40 million moves to Chelsea. He's a liability at the minute. He's played 2 league games, cost Newcastle 2 penalties and another goal. I think the concern is with the first 3 games of this season that it's more of the same. More of the same nonsense as last season. And you referenced, Chris, Newcastle's very good end to last season. But if you break it down, who did they beat at the end of last season? They beat Sheffield United, relegated, Fulham, relegated. Burnley, 17th. They beat West Ham, which was a good win, but West Ham had 10 men, and they got a really good win against Leicester, which, to be fair, despite Leicester's excellent, poor end of the season, it's a really good win. So it wasn't as if the tide had changed. I thought they were still playing quite badly, but picking up a couple of results where they weren't. We went 21 games last season and won 2 of them in the middle of the league campaign. Most managers in the Premier League don't survive that. And if there'd been fans in the stadium last season during that period, I don't think he'd have survived it then. So to see no improvement, when you say it was always going to happen, half-time against West Ham, it wasn't going to happen. Half-time against West Ham, when we played well against a good team and showed some attacking intent. Why isn't Newcastle?
But I'm talking about the anti-Bruce agenda by a large section of the
Chris, it doesn't just stop at the end of one season and then there's a blank sheet of paper and everybody's happy again.
And that's the whole point. I don't know how he keeps going. I don't understand how he keeps going, because he is just hated by the bulk.
If you were him, would you walk away?
Depends how much he's been paid. Yes. Yeah,
right. Yeah. Well, there are a lot of things more important than money.
No, absolutely. And Steve Bruce has enough money, and that's, well, I don't know that, but he probably does. But what I would say is that it's remarkable how the abuse which he has taken. He's a Geordie. He loves the club. It's remarkable. It tells you a lot about his character that he's actually sticking this out. It's incredible.
Would you walk away, Nedum?
I think I understand why he's not walking away. And that's because as a manager, you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe that you can make the team better and that you're good enough. And I think if he decides to walk away, then there'll be questions asked about him for the remainder of his career. Because, as I say, the team is struggling and the fans seem to not like him.
But it's not going to get any better, Nedum.
But he must believe that he can. He must believe that he can. Because otherwise he wouldn't be in the job, as you've mentioned there. He has to believe that he can make that team better.
If I said to all three of you, what are Newcastle at the moment? What would you say? Nedum, you can go first.
Okay, so if I've got a second, I'm going to do this in 2 parts. So at the minute, there's a phrase in America where they call it a dumpster fire, and that's what Newcastle are. But start of the season,
we're not in America, so what's the English version?
You just call it whatever you called Arsenal on the weekend, or the 2 things you called Arsenal, whatever it was. But at the start of the year, I spoke with Callum Wilson, and he was saying how this year they were going to be more front foot and they're going to try and score more goals and all this stuff. So it seems like they're a team who want an identity but don't know how to get there. And maybe that is a managerial thing. So I guess I'd just describe them as lost.
Yeah. Which is. And that's the point, Nedum, isn't it? You look at those stats from that Southampton game, and Southampton are a side who you wonder, whether they're fragile or not. Lost their opening game, all right, they've got a good point against Manchester United in the second, but they've lost a few players. What are people making of them? And they went to St James's Park and dominated. They were on the front foot.
Yeah, I think that's what happens in football sometimes. When you know that a team is in a bad spot, you travel up there and you don't fear that occasion. I think there have been plenty of times where probably the 3 of us have been to St James's Park when it's been rocking, and you know that's going to be a very, very tough occasion. Yeah. But when you arrive and you know that it wouldn't take a lot for the crowd to go against their team and against their manager, it gives you more confidence because it feels just like a free hit, basically, I think.
Chris, what are Newcastle?
They're an unhappy club with an unhappy support. But this really, I have big sympathy for Steve Bruce, because this isn't just about Steve Bruce, is it? This is more about the owner and what's gone on above Steve Bruce.
You can have sympathy for Steve Bruce whilst recognising that Steve Bruce is part of the issue as well.
Yeah, look at of course the brand of football. I've mentioned his comment last season and the way that things turn around. But I don't. The only end to this is going to be Steve Bruce. Eventually, either he's going to be sacked or he's going to walk away, because I can't see, even if he had a good run of results, the fans changing their opinion of him because of what's happened in the past, and that's a sad state of affairs.
What's in Newcastle, Micah? You can do it in one word if you want.
It's too hard. It's too difficult, because, like Chris has said, they've got problems with the owners. The fans don't like the manager, and they've struggled to keep the players fit last season. This season's not started off well, so it's like you're looking for that love story, and it's not there. no matter where you try to plug the gaps, and I've said so many times that I feel for the Newcastle fans because I've been there and it's rocking. But if you're a manager and the owner's giving you one player, which is now they've got Willock full time, then ultimately, if they lose one or two players, they're going to be in the same situation as next season and struggling until they're back fixed. So it's just difficult times.
Thought Alex, as a final one, Nedum's use of the word "lost" seemed very appropriate.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so much antipathy around the club, and there's always a danger at a football club where their anger does turn into kind of people just shrugging their shoulders and giving it up, and that's the great concern, that the club is hemorrhaging fans in one of the most passionate parts of the football country about football, and the club don't seem to care. They don't seem to want to address it. Steve Bruce isn't the man, and my concern, Micah, is you've mentioned that Newcastle lose a couple of key players and then we're screwed. That's true, but we've got all our players for it at the minute and we're still rubbish. We still haven't been able to beat.
Well, at
Villa,
least
Burnley,
you're still
Southampton.
At least you're still scoring, though. Alex, as much as you think you're rubbish, at least you're still scoring.
We've conceded 8.
I know, yeah.
It's all right scoring a couple of goals.
You have to take the positives as well, though. I know it's disheartening for you right now, but at least Maximan and Wilson are scoring goals.
Yeah, there is that, but Newcastle play this 5 at the back system. They play Jacob Murphy, who's not a fullback at fullback. They play Matt Ritchie, who's not a fullback at left back, and that's where the frustration comes from. Because I know Newcastle are going to get rinsed on the flanks because we don't play defenders there. How can't Steve Bruce see it? These are the things fans just think. What am I actually turning up?
So you know better than Steve Bruce, then. Listening to, who's had a long career in management, and some of this, I can just sense you're unhappy with him, and even the stuff last season, his victories, well, they were rubbish. Although they were Premier League teams last season.
Hang on a minute. Well, Alex can answer.
And Leicester City, where they were brilliant, it was sort of a begrudging. Well, I don't know what to say about that. They did do well. That was a fluke.
Alex didn't say that. Hang on.
Well,
Alex can answer for himself, I suppose. But all he pointed out was that 2 of the teams were relegated and one of them finished 17th.
Yeah, but they were still Premier League teams. So let's not give him any credit for anything.
The concern, Chris, is who can we actually beat? That's the thing. So we played Burnley in the League Cup, and he made 9 changes. He didn't play any of the best players, but got knocked out of the League Cup. One of the few bright sparks last season where Bruce did well is getting us to a League Cup quarter final. He then got beat by Brentford reserve. Brentford are a good team, but they played a reserve team and knocked it out in embarrassing fashion. So it's almost like Bruce isn't grasping those opportunities. Why not send your best lads out against Burnley? Much weakened team. Give them a hammering. Bounce into Southampton on Saturday with a bit of momentum. So Steve Bruce is to me, is the architect of his own downfall. Something, but just want to really come back on your comments there about last season. I give Bruce loads of credit last season for turning it around. So did loads of Newcastle fans. The problem is, I keep seeing the same catastrophic performance week after week. It doesn't there's no improvement. There's nothing to hang your hat on. Micah, you're saying the lad scored a couple of goals there. Like, Jesus Christ, is this us getting beat 4-2 by West Ham thinking, hooray, we scored 2 goals? It's not good enough. It wouldn't be good enough for any of the clubs you support. So it shouldn't be for us.
I'm going to have to move on. If there's a positive in this, do you know when you play Arsenal? Arsenal fans, it was a joke. Before I get loads of abuse.
I don't think it was.
It was a joke. But Alex, thank you very much for coming on.
Cheers, lads. Thank
you. Alex Hurst, host of Newcastle True Faith. I've got a text from Colin Murray.